Podcasts are the new in thing, and they're the fastest way you can use to grow an audience, build a business, build a personal brand, and also make a lot of money. In this video, I'm going to show you how to start a podcast in 2024 and beyond, how to make it successful, and also cover some of the most common mistakes and the biggest mistakes business owners and podcasters make when they're starting a podcast, which will make a huge dent in your podcasting plans. Let's go. So, I want to start by answering the most important question first. Why podcasts and why not just creating content? I have my own understanding about this. Now, when you start creating content today, the competition is quite high when it comes to producing content, creating content, editing content, and podcast is still, I say, an underdog in those regards. You can start a podcast in your bedroom like this, you start in a room and start a podcast and still gain a lot of visibility. So, a podcast has a lower barrier to entry in the world of content creation and personal brand growing, while making content is something you can do. And if you create a video podcast, which I'll discuss later in this video, you can do actually both of best worlds. You can start a podcast and then just take out clips from the podcast and use that as video content as well. So it's the best of both worlds doing podcasts. Apart from them, there's some interesting statistics about podcasting and how the industry is growing, which I want to talk about so that you can get an idea of how podcasting is growing and what's the industry like. So I have them on my screen here. So if you look at podcasting, there are only around 464 million podcaster listeners in the world, and it's going to grow by 500 million by the end of 2024 this year. So 500 million people around the world listen to podcasts, and the average listener spends around 7 hours per week listening to podcasts, which is fantastic. 20 to 40 minutes is the sweet spot. So imagine somebody spending 20 to 40 minutes listening to your episodes, how big of a connection they'll develop. Versus when they watch a 30-second video of you, it's harder to develop a strong connection when it comes to short form content, and podcast is breaking that pattern. Then you have podcast listening statistics in which are the countries. But here's the statistic I want to focus on. The growth chart of podcast is pretty good. It's steadily growing, and I think in the next 10 years, you'll see a consistent growth across the board when it comes to people consuming podcasts. And if I scroll down, you see the industry growth or the average market size of podcasts. So right now, you see podcasting is over $23 billion industry in 2023, and by 2030, it's going to go up to $100 billion industry. So it's a huge number. So podcasting is steadily growing, and you should be in growing markets if you want to develop a more, build an audience and build a business. Now, I don't think this chart is correct because it states the numbers in millions, but as it says here, $100 billion before 2030. So this is the benefit of doing podcasts, or why you should be focusing on podcasts instead of short form content, because it allows you to, it's an untapped market still when it comes to generate an audience. Now that's the comparison between creating regular content and podcasts and what's the growth like. But you have the benefits of creating content anyway. So you get a lot of leads for your business, you can grow a personal brand, and you can have like a great audience which you can monetize, and you'll have your expertise to show off. It's a creative outlet that you can use. It's a lot of fun to do podcasts. By the way, this can be qualified as a podcast as well. And you can just showcase your expertise to the world. So regardless of what your goal is with podcasting, you can just do it for fun, you can start, or you can do it just to grow your business. All of these goals can be fulfilled if you start a podcast. So that's the idea why you should start podcasts compared to just short form content or just regular content. So now that you understand the podcasting industry and why you should start podcasts and what's the advantages of doing podcasts, I want to cover two biggest mistakes when it comes to podcasting, and this will define your, I'd say not a future, but these are very important to understand and realize in the beginning so that you can have a great foundation when it comes to building a podcast. So the first mistake I see is not doing or treating this not as a business or not doing this seriously. I heard the statistic somewhere that 90% of podcasters quit after the first 4 episodes. Yeah, just 4 episodes. It's crazy. And the rest 90% quit after around 20 episodes. So imagine this, 99% of people quit after 20 episodes. So if you have to be in the top 1% of podcast producers in the world, all you have to do is just exceed 20 episodes. So the bar is quite low, but it takes time and effort and consistency to show up regularly and create this kind of content so you can be successful. If you don't produce content regularly, the audience will eventually be bored or just move on to someone else. So if you decide to start a podcast, be consistent with producing. And of course, with this guide, you'll know how to produce a piece of content, how to produce a podcast, and I'll show you everything on how to distribute that content as well. So that's the first mistake you need to do, or you need to rectify if you are doing a podcast. And the second mistake, which is I think more important, is not owning your audience. Now, podcasting is great, and you can have podcasts uploaded to YouTube today. You can have podcasts on Spotify, Apple Music, or Apple Podcasts, 100 different places. But the biggest problem with all these platforms is that you don't build the audience, you build the audience for the platform. So a listener or subscriber on Spotify is technically not your subscriber because you have no way to connect with them, right? Imagine someone subscribes to you on YouTube. By the way, you should be subscribed as well. You can't actually connect with them, right? You can't send them an email, you can't send them a DM. So if you want to make your business in podcasting successful, or podcasting and then business successful at the same time, close to each other, you need to build a website so that you can direct users from Spotify, from YouTube, all the different places to your website and then get their contact information and then do business with them. It's absolutely critical if you do this, or that you do this. Otherwise, you lose out on a lot of, like I say, you lose a big chunk of your business in the process if you don't do this from the beginning. Imagine you have 1 million subscribers on YouTube and you have none of their contact addresses. You won't be able to monetize any of those people or provide your valuable services to them. So if you start this from day one, it's going to be a lot beneficial for you as a podcaster. And even with a small audience, if you have a way to connect with them, you can start making your business and podcast successful even with a small audience. So it's very important to build a website and have the right strategy in place when it comes to capturing information, having the right assets, or having the right products and services to promote to your audience so that you can make your podcast successful. And don't worry, making a website is absolutely easy. In the later part of this video, I'm going to show you in literally 5 to 7 minutes how you can build a website for ridiculously low cost. So watch out for that section as well. So these are the 2 mistakes: not owning your audience, and the best way to do that is by having your website and redirecting your users to your website and then doing all sorts of things with them. And the second is, or the first was, that you should be consistent with producing content, otherwise you won't build an audience in the first place. So that's it for the 2 mistakes that you should be doing or should be avoiding when it comes to building your podcast. So now let's talk about what to podcast about, right? It's a huge challenge. If I just tell you, hey, let's start a podcast, you might wonder what topics can I podcast about? So I'll give you just a few guidelines you can think about when it comes to starting a podcast. You can think about what are your passions or your interests, or something you are really excited about, or you can podcast about your business. So let's, for example, I am a huge camera nerd, right? I love cameras. I have one camera here, one camera here, one camera there, a couple of cameras here, and I have lights, and I have all this equipment, and I'm really passionate about this thing. So if I start a podcast, I might just start a podcast about, hey, all this camera gear and how you can do video production, how you can record videos in your home studio, how to set up a home studio, how much money to spend on a home studio. See, all these questions are coming naturally to me because I'm really passionate about my topic. So similar to this, you can think about what things are you passionate about, and you'll have no problems coming with ideas on what you should podcast about. Apart from this, you can do podcasts about any kind of business you have. So I have some notes here. So if you have a gardening business, you can do a podcast about gardening. If you are in a pool cleaning business, you can do a podcast about pool cleaning. If you are in a roofing business, you can do a podcast about it. If you're in the HVAC business, plumbing business, and car repair business, you can absolutely do podcasts about it and teaching people or showing your expertise, so you'll get more leads and customers this way. And then if you have some other interests, for example, you might be very interested in politics, you might be very interested in sports, news content, or you might be a very faithful and spiritual person and you want to talk about that. All of these are valid, I say, topics to podcast about. So regardless of whether you do a strictly business related podcast or you do a very interest based podcast, there is a way to make both of these successful monetary wise and also gaining a personal brand or gaining an audience and building a personal brand. So regardless of what your expertise is, whatever you like to talk about, whatever you think you have a passion in, you can start a podcast in that area and still make it successful. So don't worry about being too niche or too broad, or should I like this, should I do a podcast about this? If you have a very strong passion about a topic, you can start a podcast around it. So let's talk about the next big consideration when it comes to podcasting. Should you do a video podcast or should you do just an audio-based podcast? Well, the answer is that it depends. But if you can pull it off, or if you have the right resources, if you are willing to make the commitment to creating video, absolutely do a video podcast, because you can convert a video podcast into an audio podcast, but not vice versa, at least not yet. And few of the biggest podcasts in the world, Joe Rogan's podcast, I listen to Diary of a CEO, I listen to My First Millions, and I listen to some other podcasts from Lex Friedman, all these beautiful podcasts. And all these podcasts are video podcasts. And just think about this. You scroll through social media, whenever you find a podcast clip, it is usually a video podcast. So if you have a video podcast, you have the best of both worlds. You can create long form content, you can upload that to YouTube, have great distribution, you can do clips on shorts, you can do clips on social media, different platforms. You can do all of that stuff while also having audio podcast versions, so that you can upload it to Spotify and all the different audio platforms. And I'm going to show you some ways to automate that distribution by using some services. But here's the advantage. If you can pull it off a video podcast, you have best of both worlds. You can cover more channels, get a better audience, and when you see someone, you develop a bigger, I'd say, connection to them, right? So I would say if you can pull it off, if you are willing to invest in the, I'd say, resources and equipment, then absolutely do a video podcast. Otherwise, you can start off as an audio podcast as well, and then later upgrade the equipment and then convert it into a video podcast. So everything or all of this is completely up to you, what you want to do with your podcast. All right, so now you understand podcasting, should you do a video podcast, what to podcast about, all those things. Let's talk about something about equipment. Now, this can be a big rabbit hole that you fall into and spend a disproportionate amount of time just thinking about the equipment. So I'm going to give you a simple, I'd say, not a crash course, but simple considerations on what to buy if you're doing an audio podcast or you're doing a video podcast. And I'm going to give you some personal recommendations as well, which I use on a daily basis to record videos for you guys. So if you're doing a video podcast, you need a camera, a microphone, and some artificial lights so that you can light yourself, I'd say, beautifully in any environment. Those are the three things. Now, if you're not doing a video podcast, you just need a microphone and some software, right? So when it comes to cameras, or when you want to have, let's say, a video podcast done, basically, your phone can be a great starting point. Most phones have decent video cameras nowadays, so you can start recording videos with your phone and that can become a podcast. Now, if you don't want to have your phone always hooked up to a tripod recording videos, then a webcam is a better second alternative. So I have some webcams here. I'll play some recommendations of webcams on the screen. You can go and buy any decent webcam and that should suffice. Now, the disadvantage with that is that you'll need to have a computer attached to the webcam always to record a video. So if you are willing to make that trade, you can just upgrade to a dedicated camera and use it. Now, there are tons of cameras on the market for a variety of budgets, but an entry-level camera that I personally can vouch for is the Sony ZV-10. Now, I might be biased because I am a Sony guy and this video is being recorded on a Sony camera as well, but the ZV-10 checks off all the marks when it comes to great video performance and also long-term performance. So, ZV-10 can be charged via USB-C wireless recording, so you can record for multiple hours at a stretch. There is no record limit, so you don't have to reset the camera every 30 minutes, which is a problem with some older cameras. And you can have a file format is reasonable size, so you can have one big card set up in, and then you don't have to worry about this. And you can have it has a great collection of third-party and first-party lenses you can use. For example, I'm using a Sony a6300 right now, which is very much an equivalent of the Sony ZV-10, and I'm recording this video on a 50mm lens, which is very affordable. So even this kind of setup can give you professional results if you just understand the basics of how to frame yourself and how to light yourself, and then you can look as beautiful as me, right? So that's the basic camera department. What about lights? You can have, I said, there are a variety of companies that produce high quality professional lighting equipment. There you have Aperture, you have RE, and all the film lights also. But a great starting point and affordable budget is GVM, which I'm using right now. This light which you see here is a round or as a squarish panel from GVM. This is a great panel. This is an RGB panel, but you have normal, I say, white panels as well, which you can use. And I also have a Godox light, the Godox SL60 here, which I use for some other work or some other videos when I sit here and record my videos. So that's the Godox SL60. It's also a very good light. Godox makes some, I say, very affordable and high quality equipment you can use for lighting. So they have the SL60, SL62, and SL60 Bi, and some other, I say, sort of lighting which you can check out on their website and also on Amazon. They're usually available on Amazon. And it's quite affordable with even a softbox and a light stand. It's not spending too much money. And I also have a ring light here. This is a regular ring light just to use to fill here. So if I just shut this out, you'll see it makes a little bit of difference on my hair. So I've just added this light as a fill. So this is the basic lighting setup. I use a GVM panel here, a ring light setup, and I also have an RGB light inside that just to give a little bit of an accent. And it kind of looks like this light. So if I turn it on for you right now, this is how it looks like. This is set to red color. And this is a company called Vijim. I'll just show it to a screen right here. You can just search for this on Amazon. I think I got it from US for less than $100. So you can invest in just a couple of lights. You don't need all of these lights, but just a couple of good lights, and you have a nice setup going for you, and you can record a video podcast. That's the lighting and camera department. Then you also have the software part of it. On the software part, if you want to record your screen, I use OBS. And if you want to record directly directly to your computer, you can use a software like Audacity to process your audio, or you can just use a dedicated microphone and record to your computer. For microphones, I have used this Zoom H1N, which is a sub $100 microphone, works very, very well. On the high end, you have something like the Shure SMB7, which is quite expensive, but a professional level mic, but you don't have to start with that. I've recently also invested in the DJI mic, which you see right here, and this works wirelessly, so it's quite convenient. It's a little pricey, but I got it used for a decent price. So it was a good investment for me because I make videos all day long. But you can absolutely start with a Zoom H1N, or you can just use any kind of as a basic $10, $20 mic to start with. And once you are confident that, okay, you can present yourself on camera, or you have a great voice on microphones, then you can upgrade to a microphone. That's completely up to you. So the idea you should always keep in mind is that you can always upgrade, but it's harder to downgrade. So start with the most basic equipment you can, and then you will be able to make everything work together. So we've covered cameras, lighting, microphones, and software. All right, so on to the next section. All right, we've covered everything about how to start a podcast. We talked about podcast statistics, why podcast is a great platform, audio, video podcast, mistakes that we do with podcasts, and everything related to, I'll say, a basic understanding of equipment as well. Now, if you are ready to record a podcast, all you have to do is just gather the equipment, whether you're doing a video podcast or an audio podcast, sit down in a room, quiet room like this, and just go at it. Just record a podcast. For example, whatever video you're watching, this could easily be a podcast. And I have done very minimal preparation to just record this video. So if you are passionate about a topic, if you understand a topic deeply, you don't have to think too much about what to say. Just sit down and share your thoughts with the camera or the person who's watching you, and then you can just have a great episode or great podcast done. So this is encouragement for me to just actually sit down and start recording a podcast. Because here's the thing, your first podcast will probably be your worst sounding podcast. Your first video podcast will probably be your worst looking podcast, and you're going to be the most underconfident person on camera. But that's how you get through or become a great podcaster and be better on camera. Just going through the reps. And as I said in the beginning, 21 podcasts is all it takes to be in the 1% producers of podcasts. So this is just me giving you some encouragement that, hey, if you have all the knowledge, if you watch the video till end, then just get the camera, set up everything, and just record the episode. And once you have it, once you're ready, once you record and have your finished podcast ready, then we're going to understand how to actually distribute the podcast, because that's where the beauty of the podcast happens, where millions of people hopefully will listen to your podcast and you will become famous and have a great personal brand. So once you record the podcast, once you sit down, you record everything, you have everything set up, we're going to do two things. We're going to set up podcast distribution through your website so that you can control your audience, which we discussed in the beginning of the video. And we're going to set up how to distribute your podcast through other podcasting mediums like Spotify, Apple Music, or Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, all that good stuff. And I'm going to show you easiest ways to actually go and do that stuff. All right, so once you do the podcast or just sit down and do the podcast, then you can proceed to the next section where I'll show you how to build a website in 5 minutes, and then it can become ready for you to upload podcasts directly to your website and have that distribution ready as well. All right, see you there. All right, hopefully by this time you've recorded your podcast, and if not, then you made a commitment to record your podcast episode after watching this video. I'm going to show you in the next few minutes how ridiculously easy it is to start a website and have podcast content uploaded there, and it's ridiculously easy, which I'm going to show you right now in just, let's say, 5 to 7 minutes. And you can follow along this tutorial, and even if you are intending to record a podcast episode later, that's completely fine. You can set this up right now, because that will be the first step you can take to record a successful podcast. So just follow along the screen here. What I'm going to show you is just go to this URL, which I'm going to type on the screen, https://wp-beginner.com/refer/bluehost. I'm going to pause for a couple of seconds so you can just copy this URL, take a screenshot, pause the video, go to this URL. This is a referral link to Bluehost, which is one of the biggest website hosting services in the world. And you can see here, special offer for WordPress users. You can get started at just $199 a month. It's ridiculously low price, and you get a free domain name for the first year as well. So you can purchase a domain name with Bluehost, and no fees will be applied to your first year of owning that domain name. You also get free SSL certificate, which is great for security, and also one-click WordPress install. So your WordPress will be installed in just a matter of minutes. That is how you set up your website. So when you click Get Started Now, it'll take you to the pricing options here. And what you can do is just click the first option, because we're going to build just one website. But if you have plans to make more websites, you can choose any of these options as well. I would recommend you start with this one. You click, and you might just get this pop-up here, which you can skip. And on the next step, you can actually add the domain name to your account, create a new domain. You can add or search for available domain names and just select that and add it to your account. And the first year for that domain name will be completely free for you. And if you already own a domain name on another hosting provider, you can add it here. Now I'm just setting this up for demonstration. So I'm not going to do this. I'm just going to do this, but you should absolutely search for a domain name, find it here, add it here. It'll be added to your account. And this, all you have to do is click I'll create or whatever purchase option you do, and then you'll be taken to the billing options here. So inside the billing options, there are some optionals which you can disable. For example, code guard is something you don't want. Then site log essentials, these are all optional upgrades, so you don't need all of this. So without all of this, if you just enter your purchase information, you'll see the pricing is exactly $23.88, which is less than $2 a month. So for $24, less than $24 a year, you'll be able to have a complete website built for you, have a domain name for absolutely free, and then you can do all sorts of stuff. I'm going to show you how to add podcast episodes to this and how to actually start creating and doing all sorts of good stuff with your website. So once you see the screen, what you do is just add in your purchase information and just click submit button, and you'll get a couple of emails from Bluehost that, hey, your website is ready, your backend access is ready, and you'll be able to log into the backend of Bluehost. And I'm going to show you how what the next steps are to actually creating your website. So make sure to finish the purchase and then proceed to the next step, which is inside the backend of Bluehost. So once you see all those updates in your email, this is what you can get access to, which is the backend of Bluehost. You click a couple of links inside your email, you'll reach this with your credentials. And once you're here, what you see is what you won't see is this. Since I have a multi-website account, I have lots of websites here, but you'll not see any website because you've just created your account. All you have to do is click the add site button, which you see like this. Click it and just choose the default option, which is install WordPress. Click continue and just give the site a title. So I'll just name it my awesome podcast website. And don't worry, you can change the title later. This is just a demonstration, so you can change it later as well. Click continue, and then use your domain name that which you have added to your account. So as in the previous step I mentioned, you can add a domain to your name to your account for absolutely free. Type that domain name here so that it can be connected to your website. Since I just demonstrated that to you, I didn't actually make the purchase. I'll use the temporary domain option, but you should be entering your domain name here. Once this is done, click continue, and that's it. This is all you need to do to build a website. And within a couple of minutes, once this process finishes, your website will be ready with your domain name, with an SSL certificate, with WordPress installed, so you can start posting content directly. So let's wait for this to finish, and I'm going to show you how to access your website, what it looks like, and then we're going to proceed to the rest of the video, which is how to distribute your podcast. So in just a couple of minutes, our website is actually ready. I just made a little bit of a search here because I have a lot of websites, but you will see this directly. Now, just click on the website name, which will bring you to the settings. And don't worry, this is very complicated looking to you. And don't worry, you don't have to understand or master any of these things. Just go to settings here. We'll just change one setting, and then you'll be able to access your website. Just scroll down, and you see this coming soon page. Just click and disable this, and let the changes save. And you see this coming soon page has been disabled. Then go back to overview and click this link here, which is a URL, and you should see your domain name here. This, what you see here on the screen, is a temporary domain name because I didn't actually make the purchase. But now you do this here, and this is your website. It's absolutely fantastic. It's already done. It's already created. And if you want to log into the back end of your website, then you just go here, go to users, and just click the login button, which will pop up here, and you'll be taken to the back end of your website. So this is the front end which users will see, and this, what you see here, will be the back end of the website that you can use to add content on the website. And don't worry if this looks all like hocus pocus and a lot of things on the screen. I'm going to simplify the process of how to start creating content and adding your podcast episodes and some other insights as well. So this is how easy it is to create a website, and a lot of people just put this off because they think it's complicated and they don't set up their podcast the right way. So if you can do this, then you can start adding podcast episodes and creating exclusive content just for your subscribers or just for, let's say, your website members and all that good stuff, and have a great, very, very successful podcast. So this is the startup process of creating a website. Let's get back to the podcasting theme here and talk about how we can distribute our podcast and what are the things to consider when distributing our podcast. So let's talk about one of the most important things when it comes to podcasting, and that is distribution. Because as it said, If product is king, then distribution is the entire kingdom. So not only you need to focus on the production side of it, which is the product side of it, or what to podcast about, what topics and all that, you need to understand and master the game of distribution so that you can get the most eyeballs on your content. And of course, the more eyeballs you get, the better brand you build, the more business you generate, and all that good stuff, which is the end goal of creating a podcast anyways. So you have to understand and master distribution. Now, if I have to divide this, or I should divide the distribution aspect in two different areas or two different thinking hats. One is the video distribution side and one is the audio distribution side, because they work kind of differently. When it comes to video distribution, you have the obvious platforms. You have YouTube Shorts, Instagram, TikTok, and also I say X also now also has video content. So you can use all of these platforms to actually distribute your content. Now, on these platforms, YouTube supports full-length videos. I think Twitter or X also supports full-length videos. Instagram, I think, has a 10-15 minute limit, and I don't know about Twitter because Twitter is banned, not Twitter, TikTok is banned in India, but I assume that it's a 10-minute limit as well. So what I would recommend is upload the full-length clip once you've recorded everything, whatever you've done, upload it to YouTube or main YouTube. And YouTube now supports podcasts as a separate, I'd say, piece of content. So you can use the podcast option to actually upload the podcast on YouTube. And then you can clip those using either manually or AI tools, and then use those clips on different kinds of social networks. So you can do it on Instagram, you can do it on Twitter, you can do it on, I said, TikTok as well, and many other platforms that have come up. So you can use your clips there to actually distribute your content, which will just gain you a bigger audience. And this is the video side of things. When it comes to audio side, audio has two distinct areas you need to understand. There's the podcast hosting and then this podcast distribution, which happens through different directories. So for example, you can go to Spotify and Spotify has different podcasts, but if you go to iHeartRadio, that has different podcasts. And there are a lot of directories which actually curate podcasts, which are Google Podcasts and say 10-15 directories. And you need to be present in all of those directories so that you can maximize your audience on the platform or maximize your audience from podcasts. Now, doing all of this is cumbersome and time consuming. So there's a better solution. If you look at the screen here, there's an amazing service called Buzzsprout, which I highly recommend, which you can use to actually host your podcast and then distribute the podcast as well. So this allows you to not only host your podcast directly, which you can embed on your website as well, but it allows you to have distribution through different platforms. It allows you to monetize your content and allows you to have membership models instead. So on the audio side of podcasts, a lot of things about podcasting is actually taken care of by Buzzsprout directly. And if you look at this, all these directories, so they'll upload or directly distribute your content or your podcast to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podcast Index, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Overcast, Castbox, Podcast Index, Pocket Cast, and also Pandora. So all your podcasts can directly be uploaded on all these platforms, and they also have a wonderful WordPress plugin, which I'll show you how to install on your website as well, and then have your podcast episode uploaded on your website as well. So that's also possible. So this is a pretty cool service, and the best part is it's actually very affordable. If you go to the pricing option, you can start for free, and in the free plan you have 2 hours of content uploaded every single month, and your episodes will be hosted for 90 days. And for $12 a month, you can start with 3 hours of content every single month, and then episodes are hosted indefinitely. And I think they also have a 90-day free trial, so you can get started and absolutely enjoy this service. And they don't even have an yearly plan, they just have a month-on-month contract. So you not locked in and you pay $12 a month and you have to pay upfront for an entire year. This is a very affordable service. And I already have created an account, and I'll just log into my account and show you how easy it is to create a podcast. But I'll just need to do processing. I have to prepare a podcast episode so I can actually upload it. So I'll just pause the video for a second. I'll prepare a podcast episode in the backend, just an audio podcast. I'll upload and I'll show you how to upload it to Buzzsprout, and then I'll show you how to actually distribute that content and all different directories, and also how to upload that on your website as well. So I'll be back in a second. So I have a podcast episode ready, and I've signed up for a Buzzsprout account, and hopefully you've signed up for the Buzzsprout account as well. So here's the Buzzsprout account that I have set up. I've just named my podcast Yuvraj's Podcast, just to give you an example. You can name your podcast whatever you like. Now, when you see this, when you sign in, you'll have this option, upload a new episode. But I want to what I want you to do first thing is just go to the podcast info section and fill out this information. Usually it prompts you to do this when you're signing up, but you should do this regardless if you just skip that part. Fill out a podcast description, upload an original artwork. You can also design one with Canva. It's usually a logo. Select the right category of podcast, choose the language, choose the time zone, and then add the artist here. Or if you are the artist, then you can enter your name here and the podcast name something else. Once you've done this, because this is required for the distribution on the directories to happen, I'm going to demonstrate that in a few seconds, but let's start by uploading a new episode. So I'll click upload a new episode. So you can drag your audio file here or choose a file here. So I'll just take that and I'll just find that episode here and I'll just drag it here. So now this will be uploaded and I'll just say, I think this is called, so this is from a video that I recently did, sticky, or I say sticky, what's the name? Floating bar in WordPress. So let's say add a description as well. Right. So once this is done, and we can add a footer here, we can select an episode artwork just for the episode, what season it is. So it's season 1, let's say episode 1. What's the episode type? Is it a full episode? Is it a trailer? Is this a bonus? And if it has explicit content, you can also have artist tags and customize your episode web page, but we're going to do that on our website. So once the audio is uploaded, you also have some other options in the Buzzsprout account. You have dynamic content, you have magic mastering that will boost up your audio like say automatically. So all those things are available inside Buzzsprout. So once this is done, once you uploaded, when everything is done, you can just do publish immediately and just save episode details. And once this is done, your episode is now published. Congratulations, you've just uploaded your first podcast episode. Well, technically I have, but you can do this as well. It's very easy. So once this is done, now once you have done this, once you go into podcast info, once you have filled out this information, then you can go into the directory section. And as I said, you have to have this information complete for the distribution to happen. So all you have to do is complete the checklist, and then all these podcast distributors or directories will open up for you, and the distribution in these directories will happen automatically. You can just publish your episode to all these directories and have your audience listen to that. So amazing. It's very easy. Now comes to the website part, right? We have still the website part is remaining. How to add these episodes to our website. So what I'm going to do is first go into the podcast info section. Oops, my light went out for a second. I'll just restart it. And let's go back here. Let's go to podcast info, or not info, but let's go to episodes. Oh, where was I? Stats. I think there was, oh, completely missed it. Let me find that. Okay, it was in directories. Yes, it was here. Inside directories, you have to find the RSS feed link here. And you find this link here, just copy this link. So once you click this link and this link is now on your clipboard, we can head back to our website. So once inside the website, you'll notice that on your website, when you started, you had different set of plugins installed. So all I did was just clean out my website and delete the plugins, because most plugins are something you don't need because they are set up for, I say, variety of websites. But since we are doing exclusively podcasting right now, we don't need all those plugins to survive on the site. So what I'll do is I'll just go to the plugin section, go to add a new plugin here. So here inside the plugins, install plugins. So we deleted the plugins. Then we'll go to add new plugin here. And we're going to search for the official plugin. So let's type it in. Oops, I think I made a mistake. Let's fix that. All right. So as soon as you search for Buzzsprout, you'll find the official plugin of Buzzsprout here. So we'll click the install button and this will install the plugin on the site. Let's wait for it to finish. Let's also activate the plugin. All right, the plugin is now installed. And if you go into the settings here, you'll find the Buzzsprout podcasting plugin installed here. Now, here's where we'll configure the Buzzsprout feed address. We'll click yes. Do you want to include your audio player? Yes. Number of episodes to return, we can keep it 4, 5. We just have the one right now, but let's just save our changes. All right, once the change is saved, now we'll create a new post on our site and we'll add that episode on that post. So we'll go to the post section, we'll go to add new post. And inside the post section, this is how the post will look like, right? The block builder inside WordPress will open up. Oops, once again, let me just fix that. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to give this a title. So I'll just say podcast episode 1. And I'm going to go here and I'm going to do a couple of things which you need to pay attention to. So I'm going to type in classic. This will bring the classic block here. And once you see the classic option, just click on it and you'll see this entire bar open up. Click the add media button here and then you'll see all these options. Just have to select Buzzsprout Podcasting. And you see this is the episode we just uploaded. It's now available here. I'll click this and now this is a kind of a code that is added automatically. So you don't have to worry about, hey, what podcast, where it's coming from. Just click that couple of buttons, select the right episode, just click the publish button, publish, and you are done. Now, if you view this post, if you open a new tab, let's open it up. And now in a couple of seconds, now we have this beautiful podcast coming up here. So now if I actually play this, I hope you'll be able to listen to this. So if I play this, and let's wait to finish.
Box shadows. Every single
now
thing
you can hear
about the
this,
content
right?
here can be customized. Then you have the button.
So this is how easy it is to embed podcasts on your site, and you now have a brand new page on the website which is just for podcast episode number one. Now you can have category pages, you can do all sorts of stuff, have multiple podcasts on the same page, completely up to you. WordPress is very flexible and this will give you the opportunity to have exclusive content on your site, do all sorts of great stuff with your audience and monetize your audience by giving them products, services, or anything else, coaching, consultant, whatever is something that you can deliver to your audience for a fair price. So this is how the technical setup goes. I showed you how to upload a podcast in Buzzsprout, how to add content, how to come back to your site, install the plugin and upload your podcast right here on your website. It's absolutely easy. If you can use a computer, you can do this. Now let's go back to one of the most important sections of actually making a podcast successful, which is monetizing your content. So let's talk about how to make money with your podcast. So let's talk about how to grow and monetize your podcast. This is one of the most important things because without revenue coming in, you might not be able to sustain your podcast because you need to spend time and effort and resources in growing and creating your podcast. So there are a variety of ways to monetize your podcast, and the obvious way is ads. So let's say you upload your podcast to YouTube, then people will watch it and you'll get some ad views on it and you'll make some revenue out of it. That's the easiest way, but it's also the most passive way, or I say it is a passive way, but it's also the least important in terms of overall numbers that you can achieve when it comes to revenue. Now, when you're starting out, the podcast views, or the listens are not going to be enough to sustain enough income for you to actually make it a full-time thing. So what I would suggest is also look at alternate ways of monetizing and having multiple ways of monetizing by providing products or services or consulting or whatever. By giving all those things, you can actually grow your revenue at a rapid pace and sustain yourself as a business who depends on podcasts to generate, leads and sales. So a couple of examples that you can take. You can start selling merchandise. Now, this is a great, advice to people who don't have a direct product or service to sell. So, for example, if you're in the news business or a news podcast, if you're in a political podcast, or if you are, let's say, you have a faith-based podcast, then you can't sell any product or service regarding that. So in that case, you have to find alternate ways through sponsorships or by selling merchandise. For example, you can see Joe Rogan here. Joe Rogan has a website where he talks about his programs. So he has a tour that he's promoting. He has his podcast of course. But if you go here, you can also see he has a shop installed or added to his site, which you can go and see. Now he's selling t-shirts, mugs, dog bowls, socks, and all sorts of merchandise. And if you are in a, niche where you can't directly sell your services, then merchandise is a great way. And the easiest way to do this is by adding WooCommerce to your website. But what you can do is just go to WooCommerce and have it on your website. And with WooCommerce, you can sell physical products on your WordPress website. So you'll notice a theme here. Whenever I talk about monetizing, everything relates back to the website. And that's why I said, hey, you should start having or build your website as the first step when it comes to creating your podcast. So WooCommerce is the option which you can use to collect email addresses, or not email addresses. Yeah, you can collect email addresses, but this is what you can use to actually start selling merchandise on your site. So WooCommerce is the first solution. Then the second solution or second thing you can do is actually start collecting leads on the site. Because if you, let's say you don't have a product to sell right now, you might figure out a product or service to sell in the future. But if you start collecting leads today, then you will have all the people that you can connect directly and then sell your product or service to them. And the easiest way to do that is by using something called Opt-in Monster. Opt-in Monster is a lead generation platform. So you can see here, as soon as I tried going away from the screen, it just told me, hey, 70% of visitors do that and never return. And you can do this with Opt-in Monster. And it has great, options to collect leads from your site. You have light box pop-ups, you have floating bars, you have scroll boxes, gamified wheels, all these beautiful features, and you can plug and play them on your website, and whenever a user takes an action, you can collect their email addresses as well. Now, if you want to go the simpler route, then you have a beautiful product called WP Forms, and this just adds a simple couple of forms to your website, and then you can create a form to have, let's say, users fill out an interest form, they can fill out something that they want to have or purchase from you. So this is another great option where you can collect the leads and then figure out what to do with those leads later. Then, if you're in a business where you can sell information, for example, let's say if you are in the pool cleaning podcast and you sell pool cleaning services on the side, but let's say you can't service the entire nation with pool cleaning services because you might be limited to a geographic location, what you can do is you can either create digital products, which can be ebooks, checklists, or you can create an online course and sell it to them so that they can actually take care of their pool themselves. It's a great way to add some additional revenue streams to your business without actually doing a lot of work, because you create the product once and then you can sell it infinite number of times. So there are two ways to doing this. The first way to do this is using a product called Thrive. So Thrive Apprentice is a software that you can install on your WordPress website, which will allow you to create a website specifically for online courses. So you can create a website, you can sell an online course, you can plug and play some payment options into it, and then you can sell those programs online. Now, this is especially for online courses and it's a complete drag and drop process. But if you want to sell, let's say, digital products in terms of ebooks, then there's another solution that you can use. It's called Easy Digital Downloads. And the Easy Digital Downloads is completely free. So if you go here, you can just install this on your WordPress website and then start selling PDF, documents, WordPress plugins, ebooks. So all that kind of content you can start, and you will get reports about this and start making money. Now, this is another great way to do this, but there are a couple of other ways to do this as well, as I've said. So let's say if you're in a business where the community aspect of the entire, I'd say the community aspect is more important than selling a product service. For example, I know a couple of homebrew podcasts where the community of homebrewers is very, very strong and active. So in that case, what you can do is you can create a paid membership community, which only people can access once they have a subscription paying going on. And in that case, you can use MemberPress. MemberPress is a membership plugin for WordPress. You can have MemberPress on your site, and then you can create a coaching platform, a subscription billing, and you can have like a paywall to all your content. And using MemberPress, excuse me, you can also have exclusive podcast content uploaded to your site as well. So you can have some free podcasts available for a lot of people, but then you can also add some exclusive content behind a paywall that only your specific members can get. And what you can also do in the future is, if you are interested, you can produce video content for your website as well. And there's a great service called Bunny Stream, which you can use to actually host some video content directly, because let's say if you upload on YouTube, everybody can see it. So if you want to, you can go to Bunny Stream and sign up for their service. And I personally use Bunny Stream myself, and this is a great service. So you can upload your videos on Bunny Stream and have them on a private area of your website. So that way users will have exclusive content, have an exclusive membership area, and all of this can be completely monetized by you. So these are some general ideas that I've given you on how to monetize and how to make a podcast successful. We discussed how to create and sell merch, how to sell it on your website, and we discussed how to create membership sites on your website. We discussed how to create coaching programs on your website, how to sell digital products in forms of ebooks and checklists and even plugins on your site. Discuss how to collect leads on your site, and you can also technically sell your leads if you are not interested in serving those yourself. So once you do this, the common denominator in all of these monetization methods is having your website. Without your website, you are just limited to ad revenue from these platforms, which only works when you have a lot of views. So that's how you make a podcast successful, even with a limited audience, and start making money, and then you'll be motivated to create more content and hopefully get even more success in the future. So this is it for this video. This is how to start a podcast and make it successful in 2024 and beyond. We've covered everything on how to start a podcast, what the podcast statistics are, how to create the technical parts of it, how to record it, and how to upload it to your site, and all the different ways you can monetize your podcast. Hopefully this 1-hour video was beneficial to you. If you have any questions still, the comment box is open. I love to answer your questions. And if you want to consume more information like this about podcasting, about WordPress, how to make a business work, and how a website connects to all of this, then you're welcome to subscribe to this channel. And I'm Yuvraj. You're watching W Beginner, and hopefully I'll catch you in the next video. Take care.